Hey, what is up guys? In this video, I'm going to be teaching you 3 defensive chess strategies that every chess player should know. So I hope you enjoy and let's get started. So the hippopotamus, also known as the Hippo Defense, is probably the most strongest and safest and just defensive opening there is, just because you're really solid and there's not many traps that black can play against you. You can play against black or white, and it's not completely winning or anything, but it's just safe to avoid all traps like tactics. You're just safe unless you screw up somehow. So how it works is you just go for the simple setup like pawn b3, and let's say black plays randomly, like here for example. Here I don't know, let's say they defend the pawn. You just go for this setup, and you're not winning from the bat or anything, but it's just a really nice and safe setup that black can't really counter. This like, you develop all pieces pretty quickly. By like move 10, you have your castle, then your pieces are golden. You have 2 very strong bishops. Your knights protect like any pawn pushes pretty much. Your king has nice castling. Your queen can maybe come out eventually. You can do some tricks with your pawns to open your rook, and you're just solid for the whole game. The King's Indian setup is probably one of the most safest and nice castling ideas there is, because there are a lot of minor pieces around the king, which just makes the king feel very safe in its little castle. So, and it can be played as black or as white, and so how it works is you just play e4, e5, and you can get this like really quickly, like e4, e5, this whole setup you can get super quickly in under like, I believe 15 moves or something. Usually you can get it like below like 8, but sometimes your opponent does some tricks and it's kind of annoying. But what you do is just develop pieces normally. Let's say they defend the pawn, but instead of going bishop f4, you you don't have to go g3 right away, but you don't move your bishop out, because the whole point of the King's Indian is to then go g3 and bishop g2, so then when you castle, your king is very safe. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say then they go knight here, you go here, they develop bishop, you go here, they castle, you here. Let's say they go here, here, here. And here's the King's Indian setup, and this is a very common situation. Like, you try to pin the knight, they have this castle on this side, and you have this kind of setup. That's why I showed this position, just because this is like probably the most common position you will have with this strategy and castling, just because it's not like some famous position with some traps or anything. It's just like very common to get if people just play normal moves. And as you can see, like I said before, there are minor pieces around the king, so the king is kind of safe. The pawns are nice, keeping the king safe. The rook is nice. Eventually, the rook might have, or the rook will have space to get out, and it's just very nice for white. And at least in this position, and pretty much all positions, black can't really attack too much. I mean, in a lot of positions, he can attack, but like, it's not very difficult to defend against those attacks. All you have to do is just keep yourself solid. If you have to, you can go h3, and if they try to attack the pawn with the double up, then you just go king h2, defending the pawn. And especially after h3, there's really just nothing that black can do that will offend you. That's the term I used, huh? And last but not least, there's the French opening, which isn't any like precise setup, but the whole idea of the French is pretty obvious when you know what it is. It's just a nice, safe opening that that just causes your opponent to just be stuck. Maybe if he knows what to do, he won't be stuck. But what I mean by stuck is, I mean, there's nothing that he can do to like attack really. There is, but it's really simple and easy to defend. So how it goes is e4, e6, and it's actually black playing the French. So now we're gonna flip the board. Dun dun dun. Okay, board flipped. Even though I did that like 5 seconds ago. And after e6, there's a lot that white could do. Engine says the best move is d4, which technically it is, but after d4, you're still fine. It says white is +4, but after you play the correct move, it says black is +2, so it's just weird. Engine's weird. Of course it is. Like, isn't everybody weird? And what you play against d4, for example, you play d5, which is very common in like you're gonna play d5 almost in any position, because that's kind of a big point of e6 to then go d5 to kind of claim the center, unless they play d4 to claim it first, or they don't really claim it, they just defend you from claiming it. And if you don't play d5 after they quote unquote claim it, then they're just gonna actually claim it. So you play d5, and after takes, you're just fine. Develop pieces, get some um, kind of this setup. Just get a setup. There are many different ones you can choose from here. You can get the King's Indian, which I mentioned earlier. Just you just get a setup. You're fine. There's nothing that white could really do, or there is, but that depends on the setup you choose. So just choose a setup that you know pretty well and you think is pretty nice. Use the King's Indian because I mentioned it in this video. And if they don't take, then I mean, sure, they just go knight here. You just develop. I mean, your pawn's defended by a queen, so if takes, you're fine. And if they play something other than d4, which is what they're probably gonna do, d4 it's the best move by engine, but it's just not. It's human, of course. I'm not saying that it's like a human wouldn't figure out why to do that. I'm just saying when you're in game and you didn't actually look at the engine before and memorize that d4 is the best move. You just, even though it makes sense from the sidelines, you just wouldn't usually find it in a real game. So most likely your opponent's gonna play something like knight c3, and if he does, engine says the best move is c5, which it is. It's just pretty complicated because after c5 you get the space, but white can just do some stuff like get a weird version of the wing gambit, and you can fall for that. But we're talking about defensive positions in this video, so I'm not gonna go into how to defend the wing gambit. But yeah, you can play c5 and try to figure out what to do then. But a more just normal move that you could do, because why not, is you could go knight c6 to kind of stall the position, because why not? Or you could just go d5 right away, still just takes, pawn's defended. If you want extra backup, you're gonna go knight e6, defending the pawn. You're just fine. I mean, you could play knight c6 after that. You you could play bishop c5. The point is, eventually you're supposed to play d5. So if your opponent starts doing annoying stuff, just make sure you get that d5 square, because if you don't, you're kind of screwed. If they like knight c3, like pretty much all the moves are the same. Sure, here just same thing. You're gonna push a d5. If they develop this, push d5. Or again, there are other moves by the engine, for example c5, but that's just kind of complicated to understand why, because moves like c5 that look really random, the reason they look random is because it's complicated to understand why it's good, and if it's complicated, then that probably means it's going to be pretty difficult to understand what to do after. And with moves like c5, you really have to know what you're doing. You can't just memorize the moves, because if you play a random move that you haven't memorized and you don't know like why you should play those moves that you memorized, then you're kind of screwed. So if you want, you can play c5 and then try to do the best moves after that. After c5, like specifically c5, it isn't too complicated. The only big thing they can do is again the wing gambit, but you could accept it. You could just go d5 because the bishop's already out. It doesn't really matter. But so c5, d5, you get some kind of setup. I'd recommend the King's Indian or the setup I'm showing right now and like 5 other times in this video and this clip. So yeah, I didn't share much with the French, just because it's really simple, and I mean I don't know what to talk about with it. The reason I don't play it is just because it's so defensive, and I like to have some excitement in my games. But if you just want to defend and just play the game without losing your queen on the fifth move, the French is the perfect opening for you. It's I don't play it, but don't take that as I don't play it because it's bad. I don't play it just because of how good and defensive it is. Like I like it to be kind of. I don't care if it's like bad for me or something, unless I blunder the queen. Like if I like. I just like to have fun, but that's just my opinion. Or not fun. I mean, I just like to have an exciting position. You can have fun with the French. I'm not saying like that the French makes you have a life of chess that's miserable and not fun. So yeah, that's the French, and